Here's Michael Smerconish.
Hey, during the holiday weekend, I read Tom Steyer's brand new book. It's called Cheaper, Faster, Better: How We'll Win the Climate War. I appreciated it very much. I learned things. It's written in a very engaging and entertaining fashion, and it's nice to have Tom Steyer back on the program. Tom, good to see you.
Michael, it's nice to see you again, too.
In the last hour of the program, I'm going to bring this back to your book, but in the last hour of the program, I was talking about how the Home Secretary in the United Kingdom, as part of Rishi Sunak standing for election upcoming on July 4, was explaining this proposal that they have for national service, where everybody who's 18 would have to do something in the United Kingdom. Most would not be involved in military service, but rather they would spend a weekend a month working for charities, community groups, or organizations such as hospitals, the police, or fire service. And the rationale is not so much to do well for those organizations. That's secondary. But instead, the main goal, the Home Secretary said, was to build a society where people mix with people outside their own communities, mix with people from different backgrounds, different religions, different income levels. So I had just finished your book when I read that story today, and we had a nice conversation in the last hour. When you were an undergraduate at Yale, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the book you talk about going out to Nevada and working on a ranch. What was that all about?
Well, I grew up on the East Coast, and I always wanted to see the country. And I figured working as a cowboy for a summer would be a way for me to meet a bunch of cowboys and to work on my ranching skills and to have an absolutely fantastic time, which I had an absolutely fantastic time. And I did make friends with a bunch of people who had completely different backgrounds, and we had a ton of fun together. And the next summer I picked fruit in Oregon for the same reason, and met a completely different crew of people. And once again, had an incredibly fun outdoor job. Both times, may I say, I made very little money. And I had an incredibly fun time each time, and felt as if I learned something about America that I wasn't going to learn going to Yale University.
The book opens with a vignette where you are reflecting on having been 24 years old, business school about to begin. You were in Alaska. Now you go back years later with your family, and something has changed. What had changed?
Well, I went to Alaska for the same reason I got those jobs. I wanted to see America, and I wanted to see the rawest America left, which is the Alaskan wilderness. And then I wanted my family to see it in 2006 and took them up there. And what we all saw was the Alaskan wilderness melting. And it was incredibly obvious and stark. So when we went back home, we were like, wow, we've heard of global warming, but oh my goodness gracious, this is a huge thing that has to change the world. What do you think we should do about it? And so we all started thinking about what could we do to try and make it possible for this not to change the world in a really bad way.
And in your case, January 1, 2013, you sort of turned your back on all those successful investment experiences that you had, and you dedicated your life, your professional life, to the purpose, which is the focus of this book. Was there an epiphany moment for Tom Steyer?
Well, I think really coming back from Alaska, I started to get very involved in it and thinking all the different reasons it could be true and trying to solve for them. You know, I gave money to universities to do research on technologies to change the way we generate and use energy. I did political work running propositions in my home state to try and make sure we had clean energy. But as the further I got involved in it, the more I felt like this is something that I needed to do full time. So I was a professional investor. I'm still a professional investor, but I'd been part of building a couple of big investment businesses, and I stopped doing that so that I could be a full-time advocate for a really strong and important American response to climate change, for us as a country to do actually what you were talking about in the UK, which is to come together across party lines and across geographic lines and every other way that we're divided, and say, this is the kind of challenge that America was built for. Why don't we do this together and remember how great each other is and succeed together, because there's nothing like winning, Michael. Winning is fun.
There are some other professional investors out there whom you deal with in the book. Warren Buffett, who invested tens of billions in oil and gas, which frustrates Tom Steyer because that says to you that Buffett believes long-term that market is still going to be there. Speak to that issue.
Well, I think Warren's a special guy because he's the best investor in American history and he's a good person. And so people take the lead because they know he's a really smart guy and he's a visionary. And I think that, it's very clear right now that what is bankable, what you can borrow money for, is oil and gas. But I also believe that Warren stands for trying to do the right thing. And I feel as if we're at a place where we need to move away from oil and gas. We're not going to do it today or next year or the year after that, but that really we're in a place where we have to make this change and we have to do it together. And I look at Warren as a leader. So it's kind of the old, no good deed goes unpunished. I wouldn't be sad about it if I didn't have so much respect for Warren. And I know that he thinks things through, and I hope that he's seeing something I don't see, but I don't see an alternative. And honestly, every country in the world has said we need to move away from oil and gas. Every single country signed on to that in the UN conference in 2023. So I think my point is, the faster we do it, the less human suffering will be involved. The faster we make the transition, the sooner we'll secure a healthy and safe world for the human beings on this planet.
In the book, it's clear, you make it clear that you disagree with Warren Buffett, but you have respect for Warren Buffett. I wouldn't say the same about Tom Steyer's characterization of Jamie Dimon, another quote-unquote professional investor who comes up in your brand new book. You regard J.P. Morgan Chase as the world's largest fossil fuel company. How come? Why are they deserving of that title?
Well, let me start by saying Jamie Dimon is the best banker in America. He's built the biggest bank and the most successful and profitable bank, and he's done a number of times he's worked around the United States for the sake of the United States. So actually, he is someone who I have a lot of respect for. JP Morgan Chase is a huge lender to oil and gas and continues to be. And so when we think about the future, it's not a question of where we are, it's a question of where we're going. And when we think about where we're going, I think if we're going to be building 40-year infrastructure for oil and gas, that implies we're going to be using something like the same amount of oil and gas through 2050. And if you look at the statistics on climate, it's very hard to see how that doesn't lead to kind of a horrible outcome. And so I think it's important for people to think as we look forward, yes, we need to make a transition. Yes, we're not getting off oil and gas right now, but we want oil and gas to be part of the transition. We want people to accept that we're going to make a change, that that's an important change, and therefore we're going to have to move away from the continuing investment in long-term oil and gas usage. We can't afford to produce all the proved oil and gas reserves we have right now, not even close. So why are we continuing to find more of stuff that is going to be very, very detrimental long-term to the health of human beings around the planet?
The conversation about Jamie Dimon and the role of J.P. Morgan Chase is in a broader context of you, Tom Steyer, saying people need to decide how are they going to use their talent or their talents. And then I have to say, right after the discussion of Dimon, you talk about filmmakers, one of whom lionized the KKK, another of whom made propaganda for the Nazis. It's kind of hard not to read that whole conversation together.
Well, I think the point I was trying to make is this. Success and talent aren't necessarily the way to judge somebody. That in fact, longer term, those things kind of move away and you try and look and see what was the impact of their life. And so if someone's super talented and super successful, but is pushing for things that are harmful to other human beings, I honestly think they should look and decide whether or not they should change. And that's what I'm really pushing for is, look, this is Michael, this has to be an all of society response. Has to be. And that means we need the energy sector to change. And it's really hard because if you're making hundreds of billions of dollars, everybody likes to make hundreds of billions of dollars, including you. It's like, wouldn't that be terrific? Hundreds of billions of dollars this year. But the question is that really the right way to go? And aren't we going to all have to make this transition? And wouldn't it be better if we all did it together? That's my point.
Tom Steyer's book is titled Cheaper, Faster, Better, How We'll Win the Climate War. This is an intimidating subject area, I think, for many. And yet very early on in the book, and I appreciate this, you dumbed it down for someone like me. You said, for decades, we've known the basics. Burning fossil fuels, mainly oil, gas, and coal, releases pollution, mainly carbon and methane gas, into our atmosphere more quickly than forests and oceans can absorb them. All this gas acts like a blanket for the earth, trapping heat and raising temperatures. As that happens, all kinds of weather patterns in which human beings have relied since the dawn of civilization, are disrupted. You and I are having this conversation on radio live and via YouTube. Hopefully you can see my copy of your book is all marked and thumbed up with my own notations. Something that surprised me, you spend a lot of time in the book castigating the oil and gas industry as if you can bring them to their knees and get them to change their ways. And as I was reading the book, I was saying, they are never going to change. The job here is to put them out of business with an eco-friendly alternative. Respond to that.
That's the title of the book, Michael. Cheaper, faster, better, how we win the climate wars. It's saying the only way we're going to win is in the market. That in fact, and let me just give you a couple statistics. Last year, 86% of new electricity generation globally was renewable. That is winning in the marketplace because you're cheaper, faster, and better. And the story I always tell people is I have a friend, one of my best friends, is kind of a business Republican, believes that business success drives economies, makes everybody do better, honestly believes that. And about 7 years ago, he's a car guy from California who has driven cars fast since I've known him when he was 18 years old. And he showed me his car and took me up to 100 miles an hour to show how fast it could go. And about 7 years ago, he bought a Tesla. And I was like, Matthew, did you suddenly decide to save the world? He was like, absolutely not. This car handles great. This has got better pickup than any sports car. I love this car. That's what I want to drive. Cheaper, faster, better. That is how we're going to win, with better products, better services that people choose for their own interest, because no one is going to be nice in the marketplace. They're going to buy the best product.
Tom Steyer is not for shaming individuals about their carbon footprints. You go out of your way to make that point, also to provide a defense for Secretary John Kerry. Say something about that issue.
Well, let me start by saying I do think that people should be responsible in their choices in life. What car they drive, how they heat their house, how they travel, and specifically who they vote for. But this is not a question. We need systemic change. We're not looking for perfect people in this world, including you or me. So when you use carbon shaming, carbon footprint shaming, what you're really saying is individuals working on their own is how we're going to solve this. That is not true. The way we're going to solve this is society-wide systemic change. And so, yes, we're going to solve it together, but we're going to do it by pulling together. And the analogy I use is World War II, where we won the war. And did people grow victory gardens? Heck yes, people did, both to grow food so that we'd have more food to send the troops overseas so that they could be fed, but also as a symbol of caring about the nation and caring about each other and caring about winning together. And so, but is that why we won World War II, the victory gardens? No. We also didn't build a single passenger car for 4 years because we were building planes and tanks and ships. So it's systemic change. And anytime you use shaming people, that was really something BP came up with as a way of going after climate advocates to take away their agency. We need systemic change, and we need to focus on that and stop trying to put it down as if individuals alone could save the country. We can't.
I think because of your political experiences, you also are very candid and reflective of the messaging fails of those who are concerned most about climate change. You say in the book at some point it's got to be about people and not about polar bears. You also acknowledge that Celsius sounds, I'm paraphrasing here, but work with me, European, effete, and for eggheads. Right? Like, why is...
Nobody knows no Americans know what it means.
Right. If you said to me, what's the temperature right now in Philadelphia? I'd say, I think it's probably in the mid 80s. What is that in Celsius? I have no idea. I'd have to go into my computer.
Exactly. I think the other thing that I feel really strongly, Michael, that I've been thinking about recently is this. We have expressed climate as a crisis and a disaster and all the bad words that you can think of. And honestly, that's why it's so hard to think about, because who wants to hear about a crisis and a disaster and every bad word you can think of, including me? I don't need people to tell me how bad it is. What I need is people to tell me what we're going to do about it. And that's what I care about. It's not that we all know that the world can be a really tough place, and it can be a really tough place about climate. But what we need to do is remember that the human spirit can overcome that. And that's what I'm interested in, is us coming together in a deep way. Yes, economically, for sure, it's better for us. Yes, in terms of avoiding a big, mitigating a big crisis, of course. But it is also a huge opportunity for Americans to really come together and remember who we are and remember to appreciate each other. And that is something deeply interesting to me.
I promise.
Something that people haven't gotten in their hearts and minds in the United States.
I'm not giving it all away for free, but give me, please, before you leave, the 60-second version of your answer to your daughter, Evie, who is concerned about these same subjects and wonders, should she have kids?
Well, I think Ev's not the only person in the world in her generation. She is 32 years old right now. She's not the only person that age who's thought about it. In fact, I've had a number of young people ask me that.
We just, Tom, to interrupt you, we just had the conversation on this radio program last week. I've got a managing editor of my website and newsletter who's in the same category of, hey, I don't know, they're a complicated world. Should I really be bringing children into it? Go ahead, I intruded on your time.
Having kids is a statement of optimism about the future. That not only is it going to be a decent place to live, but that those kids are going to help make it a decent place. And I think it's really important. We are going to win this war. Inevitably, it's a question of how fast. As a professional investor, I see the technologies that are out there. So yeah, the crisis is worse than most people know, but the solutions are much better. And so my answer is, rather than give up, that's one of the things I'm absolutely opposed to, that we're in a doom loop. No, in fact, this is something that we can win. We will definitely win. And the more we push and the more we come together, the faster we'll win. And that's really important. So don't give up on this at all. We've had huge problems before. As human beings, we've been fighting difficult odds for 100,000 years. We're going to succeed in this, and we're going to make a world that's better than anyone has ever imagined.
Cheaper, Faster, Better. Tom Steyer is the author. Thank you, Tom. It's good to see you.
Michael, it's great to see you too.
Good luck with the book.